case. Show up at your place and say, let's try this again. I wonder if you think of me. Did you?
Good morning. Welcome to MCS episode 44. Nikki, you look lovely. Are you going on a date?
No. Just trying a new lip color.
Well, thanks for dialing yourself up for morning coffee stream. And Eric, how are you?
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know what the icebreaker is, so help me out here. It's we're still here.
We're still here.
Same
We're
old, same
still
old.
here.
And
Yes.
Another week.
best time in the week. I think I would say this is the sanest. There's a word, sane, the most sane, and the best place to hang out here on X, in the vast expanse of X.
Except for the dog.
Anyway, because X is feeling a bit like a crazy town these days with everyone with their take on things. But
Takes.
yeah, their takes, and what's your take, everyone? Starting with you, Eric, maybe on this week. How's America First doing? How's MAGA doing? How's everyone doing? Like, have we moved on from Epstein list? Are we?
No, we have not. As we talked about last week, I mean, Trump didn't handle this very well. I don't. It's weird. The Epstein.
I mean, at this point, why is it?
I do. I think again. Through poor PR, Team Trump has made this more important than it would have ever been. They've given the Democrats something to pound on them about, and there's still part of me that's hoping that it's some sort of feint or rope-a-dope thing, and I think a lot of people agree with me. I just don't want to believe. Sounds like cope, it probably is, but I don't think that Trump is that dumb. I think that nobody's perfect. He definitely ran in the same millionaire billionaire circles as Epstein. We sort of litigated this in his first term with with Alex Acosta, who worked for Trump. We found out that he was the guy, the federal prosecutor that gave Epstein his sweetheart no prosecution deal in 2016 or whatever it was, and he said that on the record he said that Epstein belongs to intelligence and he can't do much with it. And here we are. We went through the entire campaign. Was Epstein the biggest issue? No, but I would argue it was about as big of an issue as the JFK files. You know what I mean? It was in that bundle of transparency that they promised. And so even though Trump himself wasn't, jibber-jawing about the Epstein files and stuff for, that entire time, the people in his administration certainly were. And it was a lot of different people that don't hang out together, right? It was, Cash and Bongino maybe but they were on podcasts. They were hammering away at this. JD Vance was hammering away at this. And when, he started his administration at the end of January, the Epstein files were one of the things that people were talking about. And it was weird because the public wasn't necessarily driving it. It came from Pam Bondi. It came from, the administration. Again, they put it in this bucket of, hey, we're going to release all this stuff and satisfy this public curiosity about this stuff. And it was like, oh, hey, okay, great. That's good too. Right. And then fast forward until, just recently. And, we've talked about it, but we had Bongino and Cash come out with those weird interviews where it looked like that they were, hostages having to admit, something that they didn't really believe. And again, that may or may not be the case, but they certainly didn't present it well. It raised more questions than answers. And even before that, Pam Bondi gave out the binders which were, a huge mistake. And again, put a spotlight on this issue that there wasn't one. And all of a sudden, Trump is, snapping at people last week. Again, we already talked about this. And yesterday, the Wall Street Journal released this report that said that Trump had written this epic poem to Epstein and drew him a dirty picture, like a stick figure or something, which doesn't sound very Trump-like to me, but I don't know. So this is an unforced error at the worst. If this is a way for them to bring attention to something where they're going to sort of drop some bombs, that would be good. But it's looking like it's just incompetence, and that's troubling. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't really know what to make of it. It kind of sucks. I would agree that most normies don't care as much about it, but even though they don't, the way Trump is handling it does not comport well. It's not good. He could have got out in front of it. Bongino and Cash, if they actually, we talked about this, if they actually got there, after these years of banging the table and being like, where are these files? They got there and they sat down, they got read and like, oh shit, there's nothing here. I think we all agreed that what you do is you blow the whistle, you call a big press conference, present what you got, and just be like, look, we thought there was a there. This is what we got, right? Turns out that there's some stuff that we can't release, but really, this is what he was doing. It looked like it smelled to high heaven, but it kind of just is, you know what I mean? Like they could have explained it a little bit better. They could have embraced it and given it a little bit of the importance that the base was giving it. But instead they kind of went out and just were like, shut up. You're stupid for caring about this. And everybody was looking around and saying, you're the ones that brought this up. Like, what do you like? Oh, wait, what's going on here? So again, they brought this on themselves. They created a mountain out of a molehill. Again, I still hold out a little bit of hope that it's a little bit of a honeypot, a little bit of a rope-a-dope, but again, nobody's perfect and they're in a bubble. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was just poorly mishandled from point A to point B.
So Nikki, talking about bubbles, do you think that this Epstein list is in the fascination, not fascination, maybe that's too much, this interest in Epstein list is a bubble in itself because there are people, because I want to talk about this thing that we want to discuss is what's happening in the Palisades land grab. And do you think the people there are tracking Epstein lists when they are going to be losing their homes permanently? What do you think? What is the base at all? Is there even a base?
Honestly, I don't pay attention to the influencers. I have muted or blocked a lot of those paid influencers anyway, so I don't really know who's controlling the narrative. However, I do see, this issue still trending with people. People still find that this issue is extremely important. However, here's my concern. I like a lot of things. I think MAGA is easily distracted over things that they can't necessarily control or things that are not completely a priority. Part of the reason is everything that Eric highlighted is that this is a self-inflicted wound by the Trump administration. They brought it up, they talked about it, and now they're basically trying to make it a non-issue. So here's the deal. This is how I look at this whole situation. I feel like, okay, what people are if you're worried about the Epstein list or want, I see two issues. People want transparency. I don't know that people understand or articulate what kind of transparency they want. Do they want a list of people who are on the flight logs that were names that were redacted, I guess, because the flight logs have been released? Do they want a list of people who potentially could be prosecuted for sex trafficking with as Epstein's clientele? I don't know that we were ever promised that specific information. I don't know that anybody even knew that we had that information. I think one of the points that Trump did make that I agree with is that those the files were obtained by a deep state FBI and DOJ. We don't know what information they collected during that time period. And yes, primarily, was that information the attempt to to use that against Trump when they were trying to file all these other kind of like sex-related or sexual assault charges against Trump? They were basically trying to hint that he might have been on the list as a way to take them out. Probably, that's probably true. But if he was on the list, yeah, absolutely, they would have used that against him. Come on, they used every single other lawfare possible against him. So that point is actually a good point as well made, but it is a deflection. And what I don't think they're doing is highlighting the kind of the primary issue. So, okay, so that's issue number one. Okay, so what do people really want from this list? Do they want a whole list of people who aren't even prosecuted so they can go after them publicly? Well, to me, that is cancel culture. And if the right is saying they want to have a list of people that they can go after and cancel them publicly, then what they want to do is participate in cancel culture, and they just need to admit that. So number two, though, is the issue we want justice for girls and boys, because nobody's mentioned boys, who were victims of sexual assault, who are now adults. Do we want justice for them? Do we want to stop ongoing sex trafficking rings and human trafficking rings? I think the answer is yes for everyone. I don't think anybody is against that. And I don't think that the Trump administration has articulated that that is something that is a priority to them, even though the Department of Justice has made several arrests under this new Trump Department of Justice has made several arrests of sex trafficking and human trafficking rings. They're not highlighting any of that stuff as a priority. They're basically trying to squash the whole Epstein client list debacle, which I just think it's a disaster the way that they've done this. I mean, it's everything that Eric outlined is completely true. But if you really want to make people feel like they are, that you are focused on trying to take down sex trafficking and human trafficking, highlight that stuff. That should be your priority. Make that stuff the news. Talk about that when you get questioned about it. What are we doing? What have we done to combat sex trafficking? And then the third issue that's related to this is, look, this was like a group of elite people, probably government, Hollywood, Wall Street, who were sex trafficking young girls and young boys. This is a group of elite people involved in these rings. This isn't the stuff that's going on day to day, taking, and some of these might have been consensual, parents consenting to this. We have no idea. I think this is a very different type of situation compared to what we're seeing, kind of from the influx of illegal immigration driven sex trafficking and human trafficking trillion-dollar business that's happening. It's got porn, sites flourishing, and everyone is participating. Everyone from every single demographic group is participating. To me, the focus needs to be on that. And what are we doing to try and combat that and stop that? And to me, that would be an appropriate deflection from the Trump administration, but they're not doing that. They're just just turning it into more and more of a disaster as you peel the layers back. They're just, and yes, it's self-inflicted.
So you're making a case for why normies should be tracking this. We're not talking about people who want to know about we're talking about normies who just want to move on and focus on Trump's other achievements. But you're making the case like there's a reason to follow this, because it's not so much Epstein list per se, it's human sex trafficking. That's the number one issue.
Yeah, and the Trump administration is doing that. DOJ has successfully prosecuted several rings and several individuals who are doing this, and they're not highlighting that work. I'm sorry, I just think this position that they've taken is just idiotic.
But
it's politically stupid.
okay.
But why is Megan focused on it?
So interesting you brought that up, because if you are on the influencer camp who are banking on this thing, right? This to have the story going. They're not bringing up the sex trafficking aspect of it. For them, it's Epstein list, and transparency. But if they, it's almost like if you want to keep the story going, then the best strategy is to talk about the sex trafficking aspect of it, not so much the Epstein list or transparency, because that's the one that the normies could relate most to. The normies that want to go on, just want to move on and talk about their, look at other issues. They can't focus on this any longer. So so do you think how should we keep the lens on this, or just move on? Or
I think I think the people who are victims of this, the people who were criminally included in this, need to be indicted. There needs to be justice. How is that going to happen? I don't know the answer. I don't even know, to tell you the truth, if Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, and Kash Patel actually even have the evidence. Like, did the Biden, DOJ, or the original Trump DOJ, when they went in and invaded Epstein Island, were they able to get all of this information? How do they know? Do we even know that they have information that connects a bunch of powerful people? And I don't even know that this isn't something that's above all of their pay grade, that we even have this information.
And that's something that, I mean, that was part of why it was mishandled, right? Like, remember when they did raid his island and his New York apartment, there were reports that there were, DVDs and stacks of evidence. I don't know. I don't know if that was true or if that was just, social media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we all knew that there were supposedly, things that were seized. And for Bongino and Patel to come out, and even Bondi just to come out and be like, look, there's nothing here, guys. And that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we're saying the same thing. Like, you have to address these things. Like, look, we all saw the raids. We all saw this. Here's what happened. This doesn't exist. There wasn't really boxes. There was a news report. I'm just making this up, but there was a news report that said there were boxes. There were no boxes. That news report was fake. We actually believed it at the time. Now we know that, again, I'm not saying that that's what happened, but they needed to sort of parse it out piece by piece. If there was no there, right?
Yeah.
If they got there and like none of the stuff that we all assumed exists doesn't exist, then say so. They haven't even said that. Correct. They've argued with us over the definition of a list. It's like me giving you instructions on how to make an omelet, or promising you instructions on how to make an omelet, and you're like, where's the recipe? And I'm like, I never promised you a recipe. I just promised you instructions on how to make an omelet. Like, technically, maybe I'm not giving you a recipe, but I'm still giving you something that everybody says a recipe. Like, that to me is what the list is. Is it lists of names and like how many underage kids they diddled with and whatever? I don't think anybody expects that. It's literally like who was doing it, what's going on, and I get that they can't release the names of people that aren't guilty, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, see, you get
right?
that. But honestly, the arguments that I'm seeing from MAGA supporters online are people want names. They actually want names so they can do that. They can expose these people. But and that is the problem that I think it's stupid. Like, I think, no, you can't do that.
And they're demanding that because the administration is not giving anything else. I think if the administration was doing the kinds of things that we're talking about, where they sort of go, okay, here's the thing that we assumed, here's the truth. Here's the other thing that we assumed, here's the truth. Like take us through the process. We understand that there's some things that, can't be revealed because of privacy, because of legality. Even if there is like compromise and CIA, highly classified stuff involved, I think most people understand that you're probably not going to get that either. But, it's obvious that they're not telling us the whole truth, and whether or
Yes.
not
Yes.
that,
Yes.
right? Like the truth may be any number of things, but you still have to go through that process of addressing the misconceptions, taking people through your personal journey on this, because again, 4 months ago, Pash, Bondi, all these people were on the same page of demanding this stuff. And now all of a sudden
Yeah.
they're like, you don't want to see that. It doesn't exist. It's like,
Correct.
again, we keep going
Yeah.
back to it's the delivery.
It's a cover up. The delivery sounds like that you're covering something up.
Absolutely.
And going back, we have to remember that all of this, those original raids happened in August of 2019.
Yes.
Trump was president back then.
That's right.
So,
right. And there was that,
yes, even though that DOJ was like full of establishment, deep state picks, I mean, it was still Trump's DOJ. So he owns kind of all of this. This isn't just a Biden thing.
There was that factoid too that Bill Barr's dad was the president of the New York private school that was the first one to hire Jeffrey Epstein to work for the private school in Manhattan. Which is, again, I don't know. Is that true? Like, does that mean anything? It could be, again, just these, these high end circles and how they interact. Anyway,
but okay,
it's not going away, by the way. That was one of your questions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to go away for people who are for people who genuinely want some transparency.
It's transparency.
I guess that's one thing. Maybe I think that may be the priority, and it's just that you're covering up things, you're lying. For me, I'm not surprised. I'm not shocked at all. This is not something that I was ever thinking was going to, fully be happening. It's the backpedaling and all of that kind of, the way that they're going about it, that is a little bit more, that's most surprising. Because I don't trust the government to be able to release anything. I've never, trusted them to do that. So it's that part of the transparency is the issue. It's when you get into specifics about what we expect them to release, that's a different conversation.
You can do transparency at the same time as you do what you're talking about, right? You can sort of give people as much of a read in as you can legally give them, take them down the path, but they just, again, that was I think a lot of people took the responses so far as insulting.
Yes.
And I see it. It's literally like if you and I had some sort of
quit nagging me about this.
And Trump did it too. And
quit nagging me about it. Yeah. Who said that?
Well, but that's
what it sounds like.
But Trump's Truth Social post yesterday really made a lot of people mad because he called people weaklings and was like, I don't need you and all this stuff. And that was sort of like, it felt off brand for Trump as well.
So
I didn't read that.
It's interesting you brought that up, Eric. I'm going to just point one thing, but before I just pointed out, because there are some concerns about Trump's health and why he's behaving like that. For the record, and I find it's strange, surreal that I'm kind of defending Trump here. For the record, that's not a milestone. The Epstein list was not the milestone that he ran on, right? We have to. Are we correct?
Yeah, we said that.
There were people, there were influencers that helped him in that momentum pre White House that made that into a milestone for some people. For I guess a lot of people or some people, I don't know.
And then when at the beginning of the administration, Bondi brought it up,
she brought it up. And don't forget the whole binder incident.
That's right.
With all the influencers
huge.
taking their photo.
They didn't do that with the JFK
commentary. How if you or I would have expected this more from Trump. Like you clearly were not on top of your public facing who was like representing your brand. Okay, so for the record, everyone, whether you're pro. Undecided now or have buyer's remorse about MAGA America First, he did not run on an Epstein list. He did not. Let's just say that for the record. That was not a milestone that you could expect. That was kind of added on by this influencer sphere that a lot of the people were That's where they were engaging, interacting MAGA from via these influencers. They gave, they promised that. But so for the record,
true, very true.
Trump did not promise that. And I just want to bring up this clip
While you're
from.
pulling that up, even if he did, is that a priority? Think about that. Is that a priority for running
Is that
the
enough
country?
to, say, I wish I voted for Kamala? But I just want you to
Correct.
just watch this.
I mean, we talked about how that wasn't he didn't run on that, right? That's part of this bundle of transparency. And just real quick, just to beat this horse to death, to Nikki's point about, there are people that want the people brought to justice. I would argue that there's a significant subset of the people that are interested in the Epstein things that sort of understand that sort of justice is probably not going to happen. And they're more interested in just the transparency behind it, period. Right. Like, was it a blackmail intelligence operation? And that's where I start going, wait a second, right? What if it was? What if this guy, looped in all these creepy ass, billionaires and politicians and everybody and collected compromise on them? And Trump was presented with one of the most effective toolboxes of intelligential control in history. Would you give that up? Right? Like, you'd like to say, like, no, it's wrong. I would never do that. But like, if you have, I'm not saying this is what it is, but theoretically, it could be, information you have on important people that you don't want them to do this or you want them to do that. Yeah. And you have this magic bucket of, hey man, okay, you better do what I say, or I'm going to, get you in big trouble and ruin your life. So that's the way these things supposedly work. That's the other possibility here.
Okay. I just want to the reason I'm showing this 2-minute clip, this happened before the election, just to remind everyone, we talk about MAGA base is interested, but now it's clear to me that MAGA base is not clearly defined. I just want to show people this is a sample Trump voter that I ran into here in Sarasota. He's an immigrant from El Salvador. And just so that people get an idea that MAGA base is not everyone is into Epstein list. I want you to check out his reasons for voting for Trump, just to make a point that how Epstein list was not on his radar. So let me just, sorry, play this again. Where was this? Hold on a minute. Okay, I'm recording from an early polling site, and I found someone. So, ¿dónde estás de?
Excuse me, what is it?
Where are you from?
I'm from Bradenton.
Bradenton, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to speak Spanish, if okay?
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
¿Por qué votar para Trump?
For Trump?
Yeah.
Porque...
Dame 3 razones.
3 razones?
Sí.
Economy is the best.
Sí.
Is the best guy for economy. This the country, he needed a smart people for the economy, because I know when I told you another, me, that this, this is, Donald Trump is the best.
Yes.
Right now.
Okay.
He's true. He's the same, the people, population. He know political. He's you gotta tell something, you gotta tell straight. I know what I'm making too much drama for the told something. Yeah. You gotta tell it straight. You gotta see, it's a piece of shit. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
So you gotta say, me. Hey.
All right, I think that's enough. I'm just making a point here that when you ask him for 3 reasons why he's voting for Trump, he didn't mention anything about Epstein list. He's not tracking. I'm making a point that what we think of MAGA base is actually very, very diverse, if you will. And if you want to understand why there is a sizable number of people say, let's move on, I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to explain. Mr. El Salvador, who came to this country legally, even though, it may not seem like it, said he's voting for Trump. 3 reasons: the economy, number 2 was he was about woke, and number 3 was something else. Nothing about Epstein list here. So this is maybe a way of explaining why you could see how Trump is maybe reacting like that, because in his bubble, okay, Mr. El Salvador is his base, not Mr. Influencer talking Epstein list. That's my prognosis of why things are the way they are. So if he looks into Truth Social, which I'm not in Truth Social, I'm gonna guess he's probably seeing more of people like him saying, you're doing a great job with Epstein list, and the people are saying, transparency, child sex trafficking, that's supposed to be a milestone. And he's gonna say, I didn't make that a milestone in America first. You added that. And if you wanted to add that, it's not on me. So
that's true, but the whole point is what we said earlier is that the influencers were given a powerful sword.
Yeah,
and Attorney General Pam Bondi made it a priority.
Yeah,
when she discussed it. So
that's right. It's on her.
So yeah, and so Trump needed to rein in his people. If it wasn't truly a priority of your administration, then why did your administration make it look like it was so, and try to rope in your major prime influencers?
Right. And it's folly to pretend like that didn't happen. Right. Like you can even say, like, I know that he seems to like apparently Bondi's performance so far. You know what I mean? Like there were calls last week for her to be, fired immediately. And he resisted that, right? And I don't know if she's good or not. She definitely made a mistake. It seems like with this binder thing, she's the one that made this a huge issue.
Yeah. And
you're right, Nikki, in that it wasn't an issue in the campaign very much. She made it an issue. The problem here is that he is not only in a bubble, apparently, about it being a minor issue during the campaign. He didn't run on it. Definitely there. He's also in a bubble, apparently, in not paying attention to what his people are doing and what the backlash was to that binder thing, because that was instantaneous. Those binders came out, and within minutes, people were like, wait a second, this is bullshit. And within hours, people were like, this is terrible. Like, this is awful. Even the people that got the binders were like scrubbing their tweets and things because it immediately blew up in their faces. And for Trump not to have seen that, I don't believe it. I don't believe that he didn't see that.
And I don't know that he ever commented on it. He never commented on it.
You know what I mean? Like there's no way in hell that he did not see the aftermath and the disaster that was those binders. And for them then not to get out in front of that, even though it wasn't a campaign issue, even though it wasn't like on his radar, even though he wanted everybody to focus over here on the good things that he was doing, the big, beautiful, blah, 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 blah. For him not to see that, for Susie Wiles not to see that and plan
and address it
is a huge,
Who is Susie Wiles?
error.
Chief
And again, the only thing that fixes this is if this is a plan of some sort to get Democrats, I guess, to like, hey, let's see this Epstein stuff. All right, there, dummies, here's your name on it. Or I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't see how they get out of this.
Is it Susie Wiles' job to like?
She's the chief of staff.
Somebody,
yes,
somebody around him. My point is that his inner circle, even if you say he's in a bubble, people in his inner circle, if not him, saw this.
Maybe
the press secretary got asked about it.
Yes,
after
this
the
is
binder
not new news.
Yeah.
Does it feel like the press secretary is very frustrated because she's probably like, what am I supposed to say here?
Well, look, she's the mouthpiece. She's the mouthpiece of the administration. So she controls. She gets to control the narrative on this too. So sorry, no, all of them are equally responsible for how this is handled.
She saw it unfold as well.
Yeah,
it's not a surprise to her.
She was asked about the binder incident after the binder incident happened. Afterwards. So,
but she can't say what's on her mind. She has to say what.
Of course, but she can go to them and say, "Hey guys,
this is how we should spend.
We need to game through this." Exactly.
Yep, exactly. And she's smart. All of them are smart. They know what they're doing.
I hate to
That's
say
why
this.
they were hired.
Yeah. So
this is just a fumble.
Yeah, so we have established it's not a milestone that Trump promised, but we also kind of established that there is a level of Trump 1.0 dysfunction happening in his cabinet. But I think that's how he's always run things, because when he was on the show, The Apprentice, that was his style. He was like, it's like a revolving door of people coming in. I don't know if you can.
I wouldn't necessarily classify this as a Trump 1.0 issue. I just think this is on this particular issue, they kind of went rogue. He didn't control it. There was no control of it from the top down. They didn't have their story together, and it keeps. And then when Trump came out and made a statement, now they all have to sort of fumble and try to say what he's saying and look like they're on the same page, which is completely against what they were doing in the first place. So there's just no leadership on this, and the current leadership on this is a failure. Sorry, it's just on this particular topic. It's been handled wrong from day one.
Yeah. So I don't know how to pivot that from that to interesting development in California.
We can pivot to the fact that, look, there are certain things that you need to be focused on. This is not one of them.
Yeah.
Transparency, yes. You can take your digs at Trump, but in the grand scheme of life, the things that affect you are the things that are happening at your local level.
Yeah, like losing your home and finding out that
losing your home
burned down, besides, stalling on permits to rebuild, now you find out that the governor has effectively exercised eminent domain and is going to take your land and build
technically, that's not true. That's actually not happening. So there's kind of two parts to this story. So let's, you want to pull up that Rick Grinnell?
I don't. Do we have that
statement? Oh, okay. I can find it.
Yeah. Land grabs are happening. Land grabs are still kind of happening here in this part of Florida too, from the storm. Some people have just walked away from their home. They can't rebuild. Let me just screen share.
All right. While you're doing that, so what this post is basically saying, this is Rick Grinnell, who is a California resident, is claiming that Gavin Newsom lied. He's saying that he said he would not grab the land where homes burned down in the Palisades to build low-income housing, but he and Karen Bass just did. He links a Breitbart article written by Joel Pollack, who is also a California resident, and he details about what's actually happening. And what is actually happening is not that Gavin Newsom is grabbing privately owned property. In fact, if you scroll down, one of the first responses is Houman Hamadi's. Well, I guess it's probably even further down now. But he has a, here, let me just link it in here because somehow it's not showing up in there. That one of these state senators, Allen, I think it's Brian Allen, I can't remember his first name, introduced a bill, a Senate Bill 549. It was supposed to give the governor authority to take, Ben Allen, to take land that was destroyed by these fires and make it into multi-dwelling homes. What's actually happening is that the governor signed allocated $100 million to take land that, what it looks like right now, at least, is government-owned land that was destroyed in the Palisades fire and make it into multi-dwelling units. The people of that area did not want that to happen. So they are actually taking, he is taking a promise that he made after, and executive orders that he created after the Biden's infrastructure bill was passed, to make housing more equitable and affordable. and that they would be doing that by taking, land in different cities and turning that into multi-dwelling units. They're not actually taking the private properties. However, what they're still doing, though, so this Senate bill was actually proposed to do that. The local residents fought back and voiced their concerns about this, and they got the senator to pull his bill that he sponsored, and he promised to at least not reintroduce it for another year. So the governor's not really doing that, but the state legislator wanted to do that, and the citizens actually fought back. So there's a positive twist to this story, but at the same time, it does introduce the ideas that a lot of those people who are still having difficulty rebuilding their property because, one, they were forced to, in the Breitbart article that Rick Grinnell linked in his post, that was the original post up there. Joel Pollack does outline all the problems that people are having with trying to rebuild because they lost, a lot of them lost their insurance because they were forced onto the California Fair insurance plan, which basically is giving them, is creating a stall tactics, or not even allowing them to really hold on to the property, which is very difficult. And then two, the governor promised, and Karen Bass promised all of these efficiencies, that they were going to remove the red tape to make sure that people didn't were allowing building permits easily for them to actually start building. Well, look, if they don't have insurance and they can't protect the property, and it doesn't matter how much you ease restrictions on building permits, they're not going to be able to build their property. Eventually, those people are going to lose their property and it's going to become government property. This is the sleazy part of of your local politics here. So technically, Rick Grinnell is wrong. He didn't gut the gap, that the governor didn't lie. But what's actually happening is making it possible for them to end up taking your property and turn it into multi-dwelling, climate-friendly, equitable Marxist revolution.
I just want to clarify. So they're not taking, they will put you in a situation where you will have to sell your property. Eventually,
yep. Or they'll just take it because you can't pay, if you don't own the property, you still have to pay property tax on that area, right? You don't have insurance, you're still having to pay property tax. You can't afford a property tax. You're not living in the dwelling, and occupying it. I'm sure that there's local loopholes that are going to make this difficult for these people to hold on to their property, and the government's going to seize it and take it anyway. So
via lien. So you don't take you pay a property, they will just take it legally.
So the lesson here is this, and this is all local government control. There's nothing federal government related to this at all. Nothing about Epstein in here at all. This is all stuff that people vote for, or at least the representatives that they vote for, their city council, their mayor, their governor, their state and local and state assemblymen and state senators, or in some states like my state, we call them state reps. They're voting for these policies to make it harder for you to keep your property. And this is the stuff you need to be paying attention to. But on the positive note is that they did actually stall the ability for their state government to actually take private property and use it for multi-dwelling units. They did do that. So you do have the power. Where you feel like you don't have the power, releasing an Epstein list, this is an area where you do have the power.
Yeah, I don't want to sound repetitive and keep going back to Epstein list, but you kind of made the point for me. Like they could release the list tomorrow and you could have the spectacle, but at the same time you could lose your home just because you weren't minding another type of list. It's in local politics. A lot of things going on. So that's a good point. So that's not to say that you can't track Epstein list, but the people here in Palisades were able to push back because they were focused on what's really has a more immediate consequence in their life, like making sure that the government don't keep their house via liens. What do you think of that? What's your take, Eric?
It's a nightmare. I'm very familiar with the Palisades. I spent a lot of time walking and riding my bike around there. The times I've been to California. And it was predicted that this was kind of going to go down this way. You know, people thought it was pretty cynical. But I do believe like even Adam Carolla, you know, the day of was like, here's what's going to happen. He just laid it out and it's playing out exactly like this. I just, you know, property taxes are a bitch, man. Especially when you're, you know, middle class and you have bought into an area decades and decades ago. You made the right decision, right? Like you made the right decision, and your property values go up because the area gets very popular. And, you know, your $250,000 house is now worth, you know, $1.25 million. You are paying property taxes on that, which isn't great. But then a fire comes and sweeps through. Your insurance
Control
what?
because of government's
Because
failure.
of the government, right? Your insurance was either iffy or as you pointed out, you were forced to go over on the state thing because, again, the state government especially, you know, forced a lot of these insurance companies out. You have a pile of burned rubble that you're now expected, and you're having to pay to live somewhere else, right? You're in a hotel, your friend's house, renting a place, or even had to, you know, try and buy something else or rent something else. But you still have to pay property taxes on this smoldering pile of rubble that you have. And it's a valuable piece of land now, right? Like you could sell it for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars and just sort of, you know, say sayonara to this whole mess. And I think that that's the conundrum that people are in. I don't know why, you know, the government can't just suspend property taxes until, you know, this susses out. You know what I mean? They never seem to be able to make exceptions unless it goes in their favor, right? That's how the government works. And it is it's depressing that this is happening to these people. The same with Lahaina and Hawaii. I don't think that there's been much movement there either. And, you know, those people are in a completely different scenario. There are a lot of, you know, very low income houses. They didn't have insurance, you know, and again, look, I'm a conservative, I'm a small government guy, but like, I do think that a lot of Republicans, you know, would look at a situation like that and be like, yeah, I'm not a big safety net person, but like, that feels like a circumstance where the government probably should come in and help these people, you know, from a natural disaster. But they're not even doing that. I don't know where this money's going. I don't know what they're spending our tax money on, but they're not, you know, helping the residents of Lahaina to build their homes back and reestablish that community. And then, you know, back into conspiracy land, the way the you know, Hawaiian government's behaving, the way the California government's behaving, LA government's behaving, it does start to get you into conspiracy stuff, especially when you see the news report about Gavin Newsom wants to turn the entire thing into affordable housing. It's like, well, of course you do. Right. And then you have people going, well, they burned it down on purpose. I don't know if I'm going there, but I mean,
or they let it burn.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's when you start getting into sort of these other topics. And, you know, even though you don't like Karen Bass and you don't like Gavin Newsom, you still don't want to believe those types of things are true. But they're just not handling it right. Like they're feeding into that stuff.
So
it's a tragedy. It's awful.
There's the aspect of the story that I'm interested in, and I'm not, maybe you could tell me more about, Nikki, is you said that they were able to push back on this.
Not specifically on Newsom, but against the Senate bill that was introduced by, what was his name? Ben.
So one of the things about good local politics is knowing how to organize locally, right? I'm assuming it's not just one person that pushed back. There was one person who was able to get some group effort going and be able to engage whatever channel and make their stance. I think it'd be interesting if when we learn about stories like this, how did they do it? And that could be something that we could log and study, because this is happening everywhere. And do you know what I mean? Like these stories, it sounds like it's a good outcome, but it's also an opportunity for people to learn how to organize at the local level, engage their public institutions to make a stand, versus this is the story and this is the outcome, and go into conspiracies like Eric is saying, because that's not a very productive end to the story. So if you know how they were able to get together, and
it's a good question. I don't know whom I might know. Exactly. I mean, they made noise. I mean, I'm sure they called, phone calls, wrote letters. I mean, that stuff is, and this is something that I used to do. I used to run this organization called Physicians for Patients. It's what we were trying to do. We're a group of physicians who were trying to educate people on all of these bills that were going across the country that were allowing advanced practitioners, nurses, from increasing their scope of practice where they did not need any direct supervision by physicians. And what we were trying to do is educate people that about what their credentials really are, because they're going around saying that they could do exactly what doctors do, and they really should be allowed to practice, according, to their scope, and not need a doctor's signature. They had, some good arguments for what they were doing, but when they were trying to basically say that, they're just as qualified as doctors, and we were like, no, that's not the case. So what we were trying to do is educate people in this, and then stop some of these bills, because we thought it was, and I still do think that it's a dangerous precedent, that we're allowing people to basically practice medicine with a nursing license. But what we did, we would identify bills in state legislatures that would come out, and we were a big Facebook group. And we would go, once we found a bill, somebody would post the bill, we would get the list of the legislators, phone numbers and emails, and we would flood their telephones with phone calls, and even their voicemails. We would write email letters to every single person on whatever. If the bill was introduced in a committee, we emailed and contacted the committee. If it was actually up for vote in one of their chambers, we would email all of the people who were voting or contact all of them, and we flooded them, and we got a lot of bills stopped that way. Yeah. And a lot of them stalled in committee that way. That's how you do it. It's that simple, honestly. And I've read a statistic. I don't know how true this is, but I read a statistic a while back, though, that it takes about 10 people who either write or call a representative to get them to at least think about changing their mind on a measure.
Important.
It does not take that many people to flood and call. But when you don't call, when you do nothing, and you just assume that it's going to happen without any of your input, then of course you're allowing it to happen.
But I just want to repeat that, because we're talking about how do you organize locally. So 10 people, that's something concrete there. Okay, if anyone listening to this, if you're in the similar situation in your local politics, 10 people is a number to shoot for. That's how you get a group together, right, Nikki? 10 people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Doesn't take that many, and you can post it on X. Look, if 10 of you call right now, put the phone number, put the person's name, email them. If you call or email right now, get 10 more people to do it.
Yeah.
Spread the word. We could stop a lot of this stuff. Look what happened when Elon Musk did that. When was it that big budget resolution bill that was even before Trump took office, and it was like 10,000 pages. I'm exaggerating, and they got it stalled and got a bunch of things taken out of that bill. Elon Musk, basically told everybody he put the phone numbers up for Congress and told people to call, and it was accomplished. I just don't. It's not rocket science, guys. It really is not that hard.
It's not rocket science, but a lot of people don't know this. And going back to the influencer,
that's true.
we're putting out a lot of useless. I think this idea about called intentional scrolling, and this is something that's intentional here. Like, we have to teach people the concept of circling the wagon locally, like circle the wagons, right? How you get people together and defend yourself. And we're not. We have to make an effort of putting out content that teach people to do that. So 10 is the magic number. Anyway, so do we want to land the plane? Do we have any happy beans to share? Timeline cleanse?
You're asking us for happy beans?
Yes, Eric. It's good practice for you especially.
I should start collecting them. I do. I know I'm known as a negative bean dude, but I'm not really.
Well, okay. Well, prove us wrong. What do you have?
Hold on. I got something I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Good.
I would say that it's more of a thoughtful bean.
That's a start. That's an improvement.
Okay. Here, you know what? I'll go ahead and share it.
Go ahead and share it.
Hold on. Wait one second.
Yeah, most of mine involve animals and
and
babies.
This one's slightly sciencey, and I think again we gotta split here right after 10:30. But Nikki, it's got a medical bent to it, so maybe Nikki, you can chime in. Hold on one second.
Okay.
From bitter to thoughtful.
Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
So leveling up. Okay.
All right.
This is a very gross study, but it's one of my favorites. It's a little gross. You ready? Okay. So they brought people into their lab. They split them up into 2 different groups. And they made the first group wear a sweatsuit where they catch your sweat and run on the treadmill. So they sweat a lot on the treadmill. The second group, they wore sweatsuits and they took them skydiving for the first time. Both groups sweat a lot. Treadmill sweat and skydiving sweat. They took these sweat samples and they had unsuspecting participants go into fMRI machines and scan their brains. And they gave them both sweat samples to smell. These poor people didn't know what they were smelling. They went, everyone who smelled the skydiving sweat had an activation in their own amygdala, their own fear response triggered. In other words, when they smelled fear sweat, they didn't know why, they began to feel afraid. Everyone who smelled the treadmill sweat had no change at all. This means that, yes, we can talk about facial expressions and body language and vocal cues and words, but there's also something chemically happening with the people around us that we can literally smell fear and we catch it. And that is also why it's really important to follow our gut.
Okay.
That's actually pretty interesting.
Isn't that cool? And that's, and I've gotten into the habit of when I see stuff like that, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Before I send it to anybody or save it, I actually research and I'm like, is this a real study? It was. It happened in 2006. They literally did this. And the reason I thought it was cool is that humans, we only see and hear and, we only get a tiny fraction of reality, right? To process. There's a part of the visual spectrum, like we only can see a small bit of it. There's obviously animals of all sorts that can see, beyond where we can see. Hear we're beyond where we can hear. Smell things that we can't smell. And just because it doesn't register doesn't mean that we're not affected by this stuff. And it's like, when you get a group of women together, right? Their menstrual cycles line up. Like nobody knows why that happens. It's not like, you guys, shake hands and agree, right?
This is the day we're going to start. Okay, everybody.
Right? It's like this extrasensory thing that humans have. And just because we don't understand, and it's a bunch of extrasensory things, right? I don't think that, sweat is necessarily the same thing as some of these other things, but these are things that you can't actually tell the difference in, but your mind and your body reacts to these things innately. And I just thought this was very interesting. I think that, there's a lot that we don't know about how we work and how we perceive things that actually impacts us greatly. And we're often operating on partial information when we're trying to solve things and understand why people react certain ways or feel certain ways. So I just thought this was interesting. Wanted to share. That's my bean.
That it's a very thought provoking. It smells. That's a smelly bean. Thank you for that bean.
Really?
Yeah, well, what I find interesting about it is when most people think about sweat, they're not really thinking about the components of sweat. It's 99% water. It's got some minerals in it. It's got some, there's ions in it, your sodium, your chloride, and some other kind of trace minerals. There's also a lactate is also in it, and urea, like some waste products, enzymes, things like that. But people don't really think about hormones or pheromones or other things that might be contributing, and it is not something that we pay attention to. Who you surround yourself with. Think about the people who when you're around them, they make you feel like crap because they're anxious, depressed type of people. Is this also a chemical related reaction?
Yes.
Think about the sex pheromones.
Right. Right. It's not just that your friend, Dave is a depressing weirdo that makes everybody, like, he might be emitting something, right? It's sort of affecting everybody. We don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to measure this stuff. To your point, like, you can,
when you're around me, I'm emitting something that will make you happy. So
excited and happy and
happy and want to, hang around for the next episode.
And hopeful.
Hopeful, yes. Saw me out, hopeful being, yes. So
I smell you through the screen. I'll be back.
Okay, well, thank you for that thoughtful bean. It's certainly leveling up from bitter beans, but we always need a range in our cafe here. So appreciate everyone. I've learned a lot. 10, the number 10 is very important. I'm actually going to share that with my in-person group, because I really
I don't know the validity of that. I just remember hearing that reported, but hey.
Circling the wagon. We're teaching people to circle the wagon and, productive action. So with that said, enjoy your weekend. Appreciate everything, your insights, and I'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye, guys.